Welcome to another edition of the Life, Liberty, etc. range bag. Today we're going to show you how to build a stripped AR-15 lower into a complete lower you can use for your next AR-15 rifle. And we have here a stripped AR-15 lower. You can see that it doesn't have the trigger assembly, the magazine catch, the bolt catch, any of the other items needed to run an AR-15 rifle. We have a lower receiver parts kit. This has all the pins and springs and everything needed for this lower. And there's some tools you need to build this. I need a set of pin punches. We have some brass ones or some steel punches. We have a small hammer, a small needle nose pliers, and need a long screwdriver for the pistol grip, either a flathead screwdriver or an Allen head, depending on the type of screw you have in your parts kit. And there's some optional tools you can use. This is a lower receiver mag block. You can put this in the mag well here, put it in your vise. Gives you an extra way to hold on to your receiver while you're working on it. It's very handy. And a set of vice grips here. We're going to use these today to drive in some of the pins on here. It's not required, but it makes it a lot easier. And the final thing you need is a guide on how to build this lower. This is from AR-15.com. You can print this out. It's got diagrams and instructions and everything you need on how to build this lower. And we're going to be using this guide today to assemble this. So let's get started. The first step in building the AR-15 lower is to install the magazine catch. And we're going to find all the parts we need and compare them to a parts guide here to make sure we have the right parts. And you can see here, here's the magazine catch spring, and the magazine catch, and the magazine catch button. And let's get these installed on the lower. Installing the magazine catch is pretty easy. We're going to install the magazine catch on the left-hand side of the receiver. Put the magazine catch spring in, and then the magazine release button goes on like so. And you're going to hold that and push that in and start screwing on the magazine catch. Being careful not to scratch the receiver. And what you're going to want to do is get that magazine catch flush with the tip of that button. And sometimes it helps to use a small something to hold that in all the way. That looks about right. And then to test it, we can put a magazine in and make sure it gets seated correctly, stays in the receiver, and drops free. You see it locks in. A few good tugs. Seems pretty solid. Push the magazine catch. Pops right out. So that part looks good. Let's move on. Alright, the next step in assembly is to install the trigger guard. So we have the trigger guard here, and there's a small detent on this trigger guard. We're going to push that in. It's going to snap into place. And then we're going to install the roll pin for the back end of the trigger guard. And you want to support the back of this so you don't break these ears off. It is possible to break these when installing the rear pin here. So those are supported. We're going to get this started. And keep this lined up. And then get it pushed the rest of the way in. And then just use a punch to finish off the rest of it. Now we're ready to install the bolt catch. And the bolt catch is going to go in here. And what we're going to do is cover up some of this receiver with some tape so we don't mar any of the finish up. Alright, we've covered this part of the receiver with some masking tape and then covered it with electrical tape. This is going to help protect the finish of the receiver while we install this, try to keep us from getting it scratched up. So we're going to install the bolt catch retaining pin, the small needle nose pliers. Just start getting that tapped into place. Then we're going to install the spring down in here. Then the buffer for the bolt catch. And the bolt catch goes into place. And we're going to kind of hold that in just about the right spot we need. And finish tapping this in. So our bolt catch installation didn't go quite as planned. You can see it got a little bit marred up here, but overall the receiver's still in good shape and this operates correctly as it should. So let's continue. The next step is to install the front takedown pin. And this is the front takedown pin that's going to go in this section right here. And what we have to do is install a spring in here and a detent. And we have to try to hold this detent down while we install the takedown pin on top of it. So we're going to put the spring in. We're going to try to get the detent pin started and then hold it in place with a box cutter. Use something that's flat and metal. It's going to hold that down, and then we can install the takedown pin. There we go. It's going to be very tight at first, but that's how you get the takedown pin installed. Once you run this through a few times and start to use your AR, this will loosen up. The next step is to install the trigger and the disconnector. Here we have the trigger. We've already installed the trigger spring on it, and we're going to put the disconnector spring inside the trigger all the way down to the bottom. Then the disconnector goes on, and we're going to push this down into the receiver. And there's going to be a pin that goes in. Doesn't matter from which side, but most people do the left side. That pin's going to get pushed into place. Just like so. Make sure the trigger works, and then make sure the disconnector can be depressed in the back. Now we're ready to install the hammer. We've already put the spring on the hammer here, and the back of these springs are going to rest on top of the trigger pivot pin. So we're going to push this down into place, and it takes quite a bit of pressure to get it down into the spot where you need it. And then we're going to install the pivot pin for the hammer. That goes in from the rear like that, and we'll tap that into place. And use a punch to finish it off here. There we go. It's a little tricky to get in there, but eventually it will get in there. Now we'll do some function tests. Make sure the trigger locks back. Hold it, pull the trigger. So make sure it releases. You hold the trigger back this way. Make sure that locks into place, and it still functions correctly. All right, that looks good. Now we're going to install the selector, or the safety. So with the hammer cocked back, we're going to install this in the fire position. We're going to hold this up and verify that the safety works. Let it go down into fire and hold onto the hammer and pull the trigger. Hammer gets released. Now we're ready to install the selector detent spring and pistol grip. And this is what the detent looks like with the pointed side up. It goes in this hole in the receiver. We're going to install the bolt and the pistol grip. So this is going to go on the bottom of the pistol grip. And we're going to get this started on the receiver. Just kind of push it in place a little bit. Get the bolt started. And then we're going to install this spring. This is going to go in a small hole on the pistol grip. And we want to get that in that hole on the receiver. Just kind of working into place so you're not getting the spring all mangled. And this just gets all screwed in. And it's always good to function test this before you get it completely in. Just give a firm push on the pistol grip here. Try to operate the safety. Make sure it's not too tight or too loose. If it's too tight, you can trim off 1 or 2 coils on that spring, and that'll help it out. Get the finish screwing this in. So now we have our selector installed. This one goes from peace to firepower, and then if the laws ever change someday, it'll go to superior firepower. The next step is to install the buffer retainer. So we're going to put this spring in the rear of the receiver and the buffer retainer in, and we're going to screw in the buffer tube. Once we get close to the buffer retainer, we're going to push it down with something just to hold it in place, and then the front of that buffer tube will hold the buffer retainer in place. The next step is to install the rear takedown pin, which we have here. That goes in the back of the receiver thusly. And then we're going to install the detent. It's a very small detent. Goes in the hole in the back of the receiver. And then the spring. And then this plate holds it in place. And then we'll screw down this castle nut. And this works pretty much the same if you have a standard fixed stock. This is a collapsible stock, but the fixed stock will fit over the buffer tube and hold that in place. Now on this collapsible stock, we need to tighten down this castle nut, and there's a special wrench you use to do this. So you just put it on the castle nut here and twist it down. Then the buffer, spring and buffer need to go in the buffer tube. We're going to get the hammer out of the way here. And this spring goes in the buffer tube and gets held in place by the retainer. Now we're ready to get our lower receiver mounted to our upper. So we're going to mount these two halves together. Get our pins pushed in. And then do a quick function test. We'll check the chamber, make sure it's empty. Check the safety. Safety works. Check the fire. Cycle the action. Check the trigger reset. It looks good. Alright. Put it back on safe. And that covers the assembly of an AR-15 stripped lower.